And I'm Pedro Vasconcelos, and with Massimo today. We're very happy to have you here. For the opening, I would like to give the floor to Turaya for some welcoming remarks, some insights, and then we will proceed with the rest of the agenda.
Thank you very much, Pedro. Since we have a lot of francophones, I'll start by saying bonjour à tout le monde. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to open this webinar. Thank you for your time and your interest. I see that we have 32 colleagues connected, so that makes me very proud. This webinar is a very nice outcome of a good collaboration between PMD and SKD, and particularly between the Platform for Agricultural Risk Management, the Financing Facility for Remittances, and the Dakar Hub. And here I would like to acknowledge the particular contribution of Benoit, who has been our partner in crime, but also the efforts of the FFR and the PARM teams in putting together this event. Basically, this webinar is a good reflection of SKD and PMI efforts to strengthen the synergies and integrate the work of the supplementary funded facilities into IFAD program of work. As you all know, under IFAD 12, we are expected to move from a project-based approach to a programmatic one, where we will be building on the different instruments that we have within IFAD. Obviously, the PLG was one of them, but the facilities can also play a very important role. And this webinar will, we hope, will show you also the technical expertise and value added that the facilities could offer. So there are basically two expected outcomes out of this webinar. And I'm sorry for the background noise, but that's also the I have to say the beauty of working from home. One second, please. Sorry for that. So the short-term outcome for today is to trigger a discussion on actually the importance of remittances to promote agricultural risk management in Senegal, but also in West and Central Africa. The PARM and FFR have conducted a study on this topic that was approved by the Ministry of Agriculture in Senegal. This is particularly timely discussion given what COVID has actually underscored that we knew already, which is the importance of building resilience, including some innovative ways, such as the use of remittances. So the longer term objective is to also try to start to explore together potential opportunities for entry points into IFAD program of loans and grant, particularly in African regions, because today's event has mainly colleagues from working on from regional African divisions, so WCA then and ESA. Here I would like again to encourage you to explore what the facilities can do for you in terms of technical expertise. So you will have a chance to also learn more about this study, which is actually only a fraction of what they could do. Of course, I see also some relevance to the work without setting the expectation very high. In terms not only of technical advice, but also in terms of co-investment and co-financing opportunity from the facilities partners and the donors, be it the European Commission, SIDA, the Swiss, the Spanish, Luxembourg, and Massimo and Pedro will be elaborating more on this. I know that IFAD has corporate co-financing targets, and definitely that's also an area that we should explore further. So without further ado, I would like to thank you again for your interest. Wish you a very productive and how to say constructive and insightful discussion that would lead to some concrete outcomes, which I hope will be greater collaboration between FFR, PARM, and the IFAD program of loans and grant. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Pedro, the manager of the Financing Facility for Remittances, and then to Massimo, the manager of the Platform for Agricultural Risk Management. They will be covering the technical device. So bonne discussion. Over.
Thank you so much, Turaya. Merci beaucoup. As you mentioned, the idea now is just to give some background to the issue from both remittances, but also agricultural risk management, So from myself and Massimo, before we dig a little bit further into the study that will be presented by Frédéric Monceau, also remittances and financial inclusion expert, and then some questions and answers, and then some discussion with Benoit Thierry on this. I really briefly, as we have per agenda under 5 minutes, try to bring the key aspects on remittances, because many of you might know about this, but I've heard, but maybe not connect with everything. The FFR is basically the laboratory of remittances within PMI. And we've been trying to work not only on remittances, but also on diaspora investment and how we can leverage this, how we can make them count more in short. You know that the crisis has affected many of our way of life, but also the way of lives of billions of people. It has been so with remittances. The prediction had called that every single flow, international flow, will be impacted by this. There was no exception, we thought, for remittances and basically migrants sending money to their loved ones back home. But yet again, is that what we've seen is that the resilience of migrants and their families has been unscared. These flows have resisted to the predictions of 20% and basically have remained to their pre-crisis level. The only difference is that there's been no growth this year. That's it. And that teaches us a very good lesson about the resilience, about what these flows mean. This is not just foreign direct investment. This is families supporting other ones, no matter what. We knew that they resisted to many crises over the documented 20 years on remittances, be it the security one, the economic one, the migration one. But this time we all thought that it's impacting both sending and receiving. It's gonna have to fall. It did not. So it's just to say the dimension of what this flows are, how the market has been resilient in remittances, and what these flows are. And this has flows to address daily needs of millions. For many, it's an SDG insurance, and I want to stress that word. That's what remittances do. They allow millions of people to achieve their own SDG, and it's the insurance. And as we go into discussion today, we need to understand the means to obtain them, which is migration, which is today the go-to option for millions of people, and particularly young people in our rural areas that we are working on. This is the first options that they've seen. And this is the elephant in the room, and I believe that IFAD needs to really look at that. And for that, we need to understand a very simple cycle that I would just want to show in one slide here, is that remittances are just the result of migration that are generated from the lack of income generating activities in the country. The option migration, remittances occur, and the circle continues if we don't do something to leverage these flows further. And if we can link these flows with savings, asset building, income opportunities, job creation, we actually have remittances working against what created them in the first place. And that's, I believe, the main reality in our rural areas today. Half of the flows, $500 billion in remittances go to rural areas where IFAD works. And that's something that we don't often see in our COSOPs, or at least in the ways of activating. And this is, I think, what this study also will showcase. So what can we do? In 2 minutes, I just want to illustrate what the approach of IFAD has been. And we work within 2 pillars. One is the remittances. The other one is this diaspora investment. Is what is not remittances? Is the savings from migrants abroad directly into activities that are very similar to what IFAD is trying to approach. On remittances, it's a simple matter of facilitating the access. It's very difficult in a way to receive remittances in rural areas. It's very costly. So can we promote better access? And this is why we work with the markets. We're working right now with digitalization, which has exponentially grew over the last year, and offering a multitude of benefits for other activities than remittances. If you have recipients in rural areas that are digitalized, you can only imagine the benefits that this can have also for other activities that IFAD is trying to promote. So we're promoting this access, making remittances get there cheap, faster, and in a convenient manner. The second is what happens when you get there? Well, this is where you can link it with so many other options, particularly financial one. That's what they need. And if you can link this again with savings, credit, insurance, you're creating you're extending that insurance aspect that remittances are for so many families. You're creating more options for youth now to decide, maybe I don't have to migrate because that's the only option that I see. And this is how remittances really can spearhead transformation in the rural areas as we see it in IFAD. And on the diaspora, in 10 seconds, I just want to say is there's a multitude of opportunities. The desire, the supply and demand exist. Diaspora wants to invest. We have opportunities back home. What links them is an unpaved road or trail. We need to pave that road. We need to enlarge it. We need to be able to provide more opportunities, more options, more instruments that can basically link normal investors with opportunities in rural areas of the developing world where we work. And the opportunity here is that investor doesn't want to invest everywhere else. They don't want to invest in NASDAQ or wherever they live. They want to invest in the country, in the communities that they call home, the ones we're working in. And this is something, there's $500 billion in saving generated from the diaspora that can be, if done well, basically support the activities that IFAD is doing. And this is what we're trying to do. Many of them also return, and with not only capacity, but also with financial opportunities. And this is also something that IFAD is trying to do. I will keep it here. I hope I was able to give you a little bit of an overview of why IFAD on remittances. And with so now I will give the floor to Massimo to also present in a nutshell the agricultural risk management approach before we dig into the study. Thank you. Massimo, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Pedro. In 5 minutes, again, I will just quickly introduce the work we are doing in Senegal, in the region, in particular with the FFR team. I see 42 participants. I guess some of you are already aware about PARM, have heard about PARM, but I think it's important to remember that, as mentioned by Turaya, we are a multi-donors facility hosted by IFAD and PMI, and we are funded by different donors, including IFAD, European Union, Agence Française de Développement, Italian Cooperation, and also guided by, from a strategic angle, from the NEPAD. And which means that actually IFAD can guide and supervise the work made by PARM, including also the selection of country where we operate. And let me also remember that in PARM, we finalized the first phase in 2019. We kick off the second phase, what we call PARM Horizon 2, in 2020. Unfortunately, with the beginning also the pandemic, COVID-19. But the big difference between the two phases, which is a very relevant difference, is that in phase 1, PARM mainly focused on the integration of agricultural risk management into the national policy. The goal was to develop a new methodology, a completely unique methodology at a global level. It was recognized by the G20 because we report every year to the G20, that allowed the platform to assess, identify, prioritize different types of risks simultaneously. This is the meaning of holistic, meaning that we can quantify the risk, different type of risk, like, I don't know, weather-related risk, production risk, financial risk, and then make a matrix that will rank all of them. And in the first phase, we implemented the program in some countries. Senegal was one of them, but also to remain WC region, also Niger, Cape Verde, for instance. And when finalized this first phase, we let's say laid the foundations for the second phase of PARM that was launched, let's say last year, what we call PARM Horizon 2, which goal now is a bit different because the dialogue with governments will continue in order to integrate the agricultural risk management into the national policies and investment plan. But the big difference and goal, which is for me also quite relevant for the proposal of this meeting and the participants, especially at country level, if a country office directors at the regional level, is to design ad hoc project proposal related to agricultural risk management. Our client will remain the government. Quite so often is the Minister of Agriculture, but we can expand to other national stakeholders. And our goal in phase 2 is actually to align this project design to the specific case IFAD and our donors, national strategies, priorities, investment plan, and funding mechanisms. So you can look at PARM as sort of TCI unit, just to use the former, let's say, language in FAO, but specifically for risk management. We can provide this type of service to our client, government, but not only. In Senegal, which is the main purpose of this meeting, in phase one, say it was closing in 2019, we carry out different studies. One of them was the use of remittances as a potential instrument to mitigate different type of risk, in particular price risk. And the preliminary studies actually respond to the main question: can remittances be used as agricultural risk management tools? The answer is yes. In isolated manner, the answer is no. That's why we propose a package of service or tools that follows this holistic integrated approach that will in 2021 translate in a more fundable project. The other instruments that will, let's say, support the remittances, the transfer are the informations, because access to information is a pillar of agricultural risk management, and the capacity building, because we are proposing a different topic, different concept with agricultural risk management. And this is exactly what we plan to do with the FARM teams and our network. I would like also to involve as much as we can IFAD country office and our network, our donors, will, let's say, move into the design of this fundable project in the country. And of course, we'll inform you, we'll update you, we'll involve you, and as long as the process will be launched, hopefully in a few months. But let me also go beyond the Senegal and clarify for the new colleagues the type of service that can be offered by PARM and facilities like FFR, hosted by PMI. We can provide ad hoc trainings. We have resources to do that if we work in our countries. In the specific case, WCA, Senegal, Niger, and Burkina Faso for PARM. But again, our expertise is available also to provide other trainings or other type of support to new countries in the region, in the continent in general. We can organize a KM event in order to make more visible our and IFAD works, and linking more our operations to our network, into the donors and the government. And most important, carry out analysis and studies to design, as I said before, fundable projects aligned with government and technical financial partners programs investment plan. What are the next steps? To be very pragmatic and concrete. In Senegal, it's said by the end of the year, this year, in an agreement with the Ministry of Agriculture, we have just signed an aide memoir with the Ministry of Agriculture to reiterate the partnership with PARM. We will hopefully finalize the design of this project proposal. And again, I say it again, we'd like to involve the country office and our network in the process. The design will be supported by capacity development and KM action activities. And at the end, the project will be submitted to the government, the Ministry of Agriculture, for approval. And afterwards will be some, I guess, bilateral discussion with the financial partners to enter into implementation and find the resources. I guess IFAD, Italian cooperation, there's a particular interest in the work we are doing in Senegal, the European Union, and Nepal will, of course, be the first involved and contacted by the government and the Ministry of Agriculture. But the similar process will follow also in Niger. We had the same situation in Senegal. The instrument tools proposed are different. Access to information and capacity building will remain a pillar in Niger, but with different financial instruments. In specific case will be warrantage and contract farming, linked to the national policies and food security programs. In Burkina Faso, as I said before is another country supported by PARM, and we'll just kick off the risk assessment phase, which represent the first steps of the PARM country process. Capacity building, KM events, design, new studies will be, of course, launched in the next months. But again, since we are hosted by the hubs, it's also important to remember that our work, which also includes not only agricultural risk management, but also insurance, because PARM also incorporates in specific facilities focus on insurance. We also kick off the discussion to link our work with some regional initiatives like the Green Wall and the GCF fundings, the AgriFin, G5 Sahel. We have already contributed to design. Now we also to support the hubs, the country office into the implementation. And to close, in spite we have specific fundings, this is, is probably the limitation of supplementary funds. However, like PARM, we have specific fundings for a few countries. I said before, our expertise is available for different types of supports in other countries, in the region, and in the continent in general. So please don't hesitate to contact us if you need any support from risk management and insurance point of view. So I close here the discussion because my introduction, I guess, it's time for Frederick to introduce the feasibility study, the preliminary studies. Thank you, and over to you.
Frédéric?
Yes. Thank you, Massimo. Thank you, Pedro. We'll start right away with the PowerPoint. Thank you, Ale. If we can move to the next slide, we'd like to introduce the importance of remittances in Senegal. So it's a receiving country. Inflows of remittances count for 10% of GDP in 2020. The flows remain stable in spite of COVID-19, which is certainly a good sign of migrant resilience to send money back home. In terms of population receiving remittances, international remittances, we have 23% of adults receiving remittances, mostly in cash through an access point of 4,000 branches or agents, mainly made of aggregators and retail agents, and less of bank, MFIs, and post branches. In terms of domestic remittances, they are increasingly paid in mobile money, through mobile money, so send and receive. The network of payout point is much more broader than for international remittances, with 60,000 mobile money agents in the country. And on average, 37% of the adult population is receiving domestic remittances, especially women who receive remittances for 39% of them. And in rural areas, this is more or less the same, with 35% of adults receiving remittances. Next slide, please, Ale. So the survey we did with PARM, it was focused on two administrative regions, Louga and Kolda. So I think the staff based in Senegal will understand well. We have, the sample was counting 600 rural households. So the focus was really on rural localities. And we have selected Kolda and Louga because Kolda has more domestic remittance profile, while Louga is marked by both international and domestic remittances. So you see in the table in the right-hand part of the slide that Kolda, 34% of households are receiving remittances, mostly in large majority from Senegal, close to 90%. Whereas in Louga, you have 39% of the household receiving remittances, more than two-thirds from Senegal, and the rest from abroad, Italy, Spain, and France mainly. Next slide, please, Ale. Remittances. The study helped to understand that remittances is a broad spectrum tool that help to consolidate the short-term risk management strategy of receiving households. Broad spectrum, it means that it helps all the different strategies that are in place to mitigate or to cope with agricultural risk, especially climate shock. So remittances help to cover food needs, to purchase agricultural inputs, and to support short-term commercial activities, so to diversify the source of income of the households. So I think clearly the study showed that remittances are dedicated, of course, to purchase food for 70%, but for 20% to invest in what we call usually productive activities, and the rest being dedicated to savings and social events. So as compared to non-receiving households, the remittances serve as a substitute for the safety net provided by government and NGOs when agricultural risk materializes. So the remittances are, or the migrants are a kind of insurer at the last resort when risk occurs. Please move to the next slide. Thank you. Alors, for the receiving households, the strategy, the risk management strategy, are more or less the same than that of non-receiving household, but they have stronger, they have a better resilience, but still there are some differences between receiving and non-receiving, and there are differences between domestic remittance receiving household and international remittance recipient. So if you take a look at the table, at the different type of strategies that are put in place by rural households. So we see that 80% of international remittance households do have a risk, an agricultural risk management strategy, whereas for non-receiving household, it's only 22%. So this is a major difference. And when we take a look at zoo strategy, investment in agriculture, savings, credit, we can see that the difference is huge as well. For investment, we have 40% of international remittance households, close to 40% of domestic remittance households that are investing in agriculture, where only 13% of non-receiving households that are doing so. You can see the difference is huge as well in terms of savings. Only a third of rural households are saving, while you have 60% and 80% of domestic and international remittance households respectively saving. So access to credit, there's also a big difference. The difference between domestic and international remittances comes from the fact that the frequency differs. For instance, in general, international remittances are more frequent than domestic remittances. The amount are different. The amount are smaller for domestic remittances, close to $50. And international remittances amount to $200 on average. So this is average, of course. And the difference lies also on the fact that for international remittances, they send regularly, and also for special events, be they let's say social events or emergencies, while for domestic remittances, it's more for occasional purposes. So this is why their behavior in terms of setting up risk management strategy differ also. Please move to the next slide, Ali. Thank you. So now how these capacities are leveraged by the different stakeholders to strengthen the let's say remittance household to be more resilient. It is there's still a way to go, because there is a lack of information on weather, information on opportunities to invest in agriculture, advisory services, quality input. So the receiving households, they are facing the same constraint as the other households in rural areas. And it goes without saying that this is a matter of fact, and this is a reason why they cannot translate, let's say, the financial capacities and the short-term strategy in more longer-term strategies that can help them to become really independent and even more resilient. So this is one aspect, and the second aspect comes from the lack of financial services for different reasons. The first reason is the distance to the access point, fragmentation of service provided, and ill-adapted financial services for agriculture especially. As a result, they rely for 2/3 on informal services, which is very high actually. So if you can take a look at, no, too early. If you can take a look at the table, you see remittances, 2/3 are received through informal channels. So it's quite impressive, especially when we think about international remittances. Savings, it's even higher. 90% are saved under the matrix or in livestock, not not into a bank or MFI or any type of accounts. And credit, 62% are informal from friends, relatives and merchants. So for different reasons, I invite you to read the study, but they face the same constraint as rural households in general, why they have this potential. So at the supply side, it is clear that remittance recipients are not yet perceived as by traditional FSP as a profitable niche market, which is a pity, because they could cross subsidized operation to serve also low value customers in rural areas. This is not yet the case. Despite the uptake of mobile money, the mobile money models are not yet providing a wide array of financial services that can strengthen their resilience and also support their agricultural risk strategies. Next slide, please. Allez. So what are the pathways? What are the possible interventions? So we have identified 3 main clusters. The key words and for all this cutting across this intervention are aggregation, combination, and digitalization. So aggregating financial services, combining financial services and information on agriculture, and digitalizing to reach out, let's say, rural households through financial services, but also to provide information and agricultural insights. So the first cluster is to increase access to formal financial services and information in rural areas. So the activities that can be undertaken is to increase the decentralized network of traditional FSPs, so they can use agency banking models and serve, let's say, rural areas and rural population with through agent models that are much less expensive to set in place. Expanding also the range of services for the mobile payment platform, and not only remittances, but also saving accounts and possibly digital loans. And for both this provider, traditional FSP and mobile money providers, they need to combine the provision of financial services with weather information and agricultural advisory, using both the human touch, but also using technology especially mobile phones, to deliver this information. So the second cluster is to develop new financial products that reduce the credit risk to financial operators, but also for the farmers. So this packaging of services would of course include remittances, but will include the promotion of savings and insurance. So let's say the FSP providing loans, sorry, can lower the risk they take when they provide a loan to agricultural farmers. That's a new technology and a new channel to distribute financial services can be also a basis to collect more data on the producer, its type of crop, and all the features that characterize its agricultural activity. So by combining these data, by combining agricultural insurance, we can also reduce, of course, the credit risk for the financial service provider. And cutting across all activities, there's a need to strengthen the financial literacy, but also the knowledge on how to mitigate and to cope agricultural risk, especially by enhancing financial literacy, digital literacy, encouraging savings, and fostering an insurance culture. This is all. Thank you. And I would be happy to answer the question.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Frédéric. We're behind time, but still, maybe we would like you to take some of the questions, from that the audience might have on the study before we dig into the case of Senegal with Benoit, and then open to a second round of discussions. I don't know if there's any hands that would like to come forward and break the ice and tell us what you really think, because I know that there's some question generated. Jonathan, please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, colleagues, and congratulations, Frédéric. Thanks for a very informative, research and presentation. And I know exactly what you guys are talking about because I'm part of the team. I was just wondering for Frédéric, whether you looked at the possibilities from the perspective of senders of remittances. Did you look at the possibilities of, where they could invest, their remittances? Because you don't have to look at the remittances as if a standalone. Remittances is liquidity, it's money. So did you find out, from the various Senegalese who are abroad, what they will really like to invest in? And if those who receive, the money sent from abroad by their relatives actually would like to invest in such opportunities? I did not see information around that. Could you give us some clarification, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Maybe we take another question as well. I see Babacar.
Yes, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. I'm not going to answer a question, or I would like just to give some examples to answer the question raised by Jonathan. But if Fred allows, I can give him the floor first, and then if needed, I can provide some additional information and examples. Thank you.
Thank you, Babacar. Are there any? I see Nadim.
Thank you, Pedro, and thank you, Frédéric. Maybe just a question I want to understand better, and thanks very much for this presentation. To understand better, how do Sorry?
C'est dans la toilette qui est dans la chambre.
Jonathan, you are muted.
It's fine. He's muted. Go ahead.
Yeah. I want to ask, how do you assess this from these farmers? How do you formulate the question to know their strategy, this short-term and long-term strategy? It looks like easy for us to think about it, but for farmers, how can you frame this question? Thank you, Olga.
Absolutely. I'm dying to answer all this, but I'm going to restrain myself. I'm going to give the floor to Frédéric to do it. I just want to say one thing, though. We're not surprised by the results. That's what I want to say. This doesn't just apply to Senegal. This applies to a lot, but I love the questions. But Frédéric,
there is another question.
Oh, there's another question from Hélène.
Yeah,
Hélène, absolutely. Hélène.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So I would like to know whether farmers who receive remittances are more likely to invest in crop diversification or specialization, or are more likely to invest in riskier crop. Because I guess that remittances will serve to absorb all the negative shocks that farmers may face, so that therefore it is natural for me to expect that the households that receive high amount of remittances will be more likely to engage in riskier agricultural crops. Is it the case? Thank you.
Frédéric, before you answer yes, go ahead.
Okay.
I had to answer. Go ahead.
Okay, great question. Hélène Ba, maybe the last one before she forgets. No. Okay.
Yeah, that's. I think we don't have any more.
Yeah,
so
yeah, we don't. Yeah.
Oh, we do have another question. Yeah.
Not for the time being.
Okay.
Go ahead, Frédéric.
Well, all good question, as usual with IFAD colleagues. Alors, Jonathan, well, the study was targeting the receiving households, so this is why we have not presented anything about the senders. Now, and we have not asked people what they were their wish. We have asked people what they were doing. So mostly, so how to invest for the migrant to the interest to invest money. I would tap into another source of knowledge, but they are keen to invest in businesses that are providing financial returns, and not only to help. They are eager to finance their families and someone they don't know, of course. And if they are to invest in a business that is not owned by their families, they really want to have, of course, an impact, but a return. So this is the short answer. This is a great topic, but a different topic, I think. For the remitters, I think that this is close to the question raised by Mylène. What was observed is they are not taking more risk. They are not more risk taker than the others. They are, but they are diversifying their activities thanks to the money they receive with remittances and the money they are earning themselves. So they are more resilient, so they don't have to tap into their savings, for instance, to buy food in case there's an issue with production, etc. They can also tap into remittances instead of the savings to purchase some input, but they are not taking risk more than the others, and they are not aware of good, for instance, seed suppliers or good input suppliers at large. So they are at the same level as, let's say, the usual or the average, if I may, rural or agricultural producer. So this is to answer Mylène and also John questions. Nadem, short-term, long-term, this is our terminology. Actually, they only have a short-term vision. they don't have a long-term vision. So I don't know if that replied to your question, but this is our interpretation of how they behave and how they envision the future.
Thank you, Fred. I see a comment from Massimo.
Yes, it just maybe, let's say, complete the answer, technical answer provided by Frederic, and clarifying that this is maybe for PARM side, but of course, with the FR team as well, because you are leading the technical part for remittances, of course, in our processing in Senegal, is that, as I said before to my presentation, the studies was a preliminary study aimed to answer to the main question: can remittances be used or considered powerful potential agricultural risk management tools for type of risk? The answer was yes. Now is yes. In the second phase, as I said before, we narrowed down the study. We tried to respond to the question: how now can remittances be used, let's say, to invest, to enter more in financial products, could be credit, saving, insurance linked to agricultural sector, which is again what we call is part of design of our joint work with the remittances team in Senegal. Over to you, Pedro.
Absolutely, and if I can just contribute to what you said, as I said, the findings here are not surprising to us. They might be to many of you, and I'm very happy about the questions because basically it's conveying that we need to know more. Surveying this requires also surveying the sending side. That means that migrants, Senegalese in France, need to be surveyed. This is not something that normally IFAD would think of, and this is also what we're doing. But it needs to be understood that this equation involves the sending side and receiving side, the diaspora that invests directly, or the recipients that invest their remittances. All of them lacking options. If you think of it, this diaspora, they don't consider themselves as actors of change or drive local transformation. They are that. And this is, I think, the missed opportunity that IFAD does still not really see. They could be one of the greatest partners because they have many of the same ambitions and the means too. And this is, I think, something that we need to consider and help them. For instance, I finish with this, with the long-term, short-term, as Fred said, here is in the short term, but through the financial literacy programs, for instance, we help them thinking the long term, and then we see a behavioral change immediately. And we see that many actors could support that. So again, it's a fantastic group of people where we work that could really help us not only do our job, and we can help them achieve their aspirations. So this is, I think, what the study as well showed. And I think for the next step, Massimo, the idea was to also show the government that. And I think we achieved this because out of that, there's been an uptake and a desire to go to the next level and answer so many of the questions in depth that we're asked just a minute ago. Thank you so much for these questions. I would like us to in view of time that we're a little bit behind, to go to Benoit Thierry, the Senegal Hub Director. Yes?
Pedro, Babacar wanted to give a response to part of the question I asked.
Absolutely, Babacar, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. Very, very briefly, in fact, I can give an example of one MFI, microfinance institution we used to work with, I think initially in a pilot program from IFAD, but also with the African Development Bank in a fund I used to manage. The institution is called UIMSEC, Union des Institutions Mutualistes d'Épargne de Crédit. What they are doing is a kind of matching loan. What does it mean? When remittance is sent from the community, Senegalese migrants living in Spain, okay, they open an account so that the receiver of this remittance will use part of this remittance for consumption, but part is used in a savings account. So at a certain level, UIMSEC is in a possibility to provide a matching loan to the migrant so that they can invest in activities such as hardware stores. Another activity I can give as an example is rural housing. I visited some programs in the Casamance region, and most of the migrants living and originated from Casamance have got those kind of loans in order to really have a rural housing. I have a video that is really describing this kind of success stories, and I can share it with you guys if you are interested, Jonathan. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And indeed, I would thank you for that, Babacar. There's many other examples that can illustrate, I think, these examples. This is not new. That's what I would like to convey. So again, thank you for bringing that up. There are examples out there. This is not new. We're not discovering remittances. They've been here now for 15 years, at least from an IFAD perspective. There's a lot of pilots that have been done. But I think in this approach with PARM, we wanted to illustrate this particular area for the government. And I think that's in a way mission accomplished. That is what the figures show. But again, thank you so much. I think we're going to discuss it also more in the second round of discussion. If we get there after Benoit's presentation on the portfolio of Senegal, where remittances and PARM could be integrated. Benoit, it gives me great pleasure. You have the floor, please.
Thank you.
I need to say, Benoit has been a champion on this topic. I want to say it in IFAD, because from back to 2012, we started thinking about putting this in Nepal, and where the reality of remittances is increasing. So I had to say this. Benoit has been a great advocate on that, and strategic thinking in the approach of linking this with the portfolio of remittance of the IFAD with remittances. So again, it gives me great pleasure. Sorry, Benoit, I had to say it. Go ahead.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me, and thank you to PMI for organizing this event, especially joint event. So I think, Ale, you can put on the slides. We have 7 slides on the program. We can go to the second one directly. Everybody will practice his French. I'm happy. So you can read as I speak. So slide 2, yeah. So this is a general presentation of a country. As most of African countries, population is really increasing. You see the number from 2018, about 16 million. But this will be doubling by 2050. So government has big plans for that, like Programme Senegal Emergent. And these important elements. Other thing is that agriculture is a bit down in terms of GDP. You see 15%. So we really see here a problem, mixed problem, that as many people moved out to cities or elsewhere, and as climate change has affected the country, the agrarian systems are not all adapted, and we need a transformation of agriculture. Really, it's by using more irrigation schemes and also by having more varieties adapted to droughts. Then you can see that on many other aspects, Senegal is doing well compared to neighboring countries in Sahel. Like the annual income is not so bad. Of course, it was hit by COVID last year, but it's better than many neighboring countries. So next slide. This is the COSOP for the coming years up to 2024. Our big aim is to have an agriculture which feed, employ, and enrich the farmer and the country. So we have these 3 objectives of increasing the value chains, having more entrepreneurs in rural areas with young and women. We call them the agripreneurs, and professionalize all people in the rural sector. We have many farmer organizations in the country. So next slide. In Senegal, we don't have so many projects. Actually, if you look at the map on the left side, you have one project green, which is half of a country, called PADAER. And we have another one on the east side, which is called AgriJeune, for the young agripreneur. And that was the move in the recent years. Instead of having many projects, to simplify have only 2, 3 ongoing, and then add additional funding within these projects. So that's why you have a longer list on the right side. And you see that some projects are hosting others, like PADAER is hosting the Sahel regional program, which is starting soon and will be mostly along the river Senegal. The P4R is a program to start soon with the World Bank. It's a program for results that would be on national scale. And what's interesting with World Bank is that they are taking many of the lessons learned from previous IFAD operation, notably PAFA and PAFA, which was to diversify agriculture. And this is interesting from the climate change point of view, is as the Sahel area went down by, let's say, 100, 150 kilometers during the last 30 years, you have now to, when you work in the dry area, you have to work with seeds, with productions which are of much shorter cycle than before. And so the peanuts was very well known in Senegal as a big crop, now decreasing. And we revived a lot of traditional crops like millets or niébé and demonstrated that people can make money with this traditional crop. So that was a very interesting one. And then, of course, the new project AgriJeune, by promoting the young agripreneurs, is having a lot of success because government is moving a lot in the policy for employment of young people. And this is also good linkages, possible linkages with remittances. Because I want to say that migrant workers, when they send money back to family, of course, they use it for daily expenses or construction, but they are also interesting to prepare when they will come back to the country. And so that's a good opportunity when migrant workers can also, through the family in the country, prepare a plantation, a mango plantation, or a vegetable irrigated scheme. And these are the type of investments that we should help promote. Next slide, please. These are the few results of last year. So you see a lot of infrastructure, whether there are roads or water schemes or livestock schemes, but also many farmer organizations. I would say 300 on one project and 300 on the other project. So it's more than 600 farmer organizations we're working with. And this is more or less 65,000 families overall in the country. Next slide. So in terms of finance, the disbursements are going well. We had to finalize some projects like PAFA extension, but PADAER is continuing, PAFA as well. And you know, as we dealing with disbursement caps in IFAD, this is also difficult years where we have to accommodate with governments that we have to be in proper budgeting each year and the proper delivery as well to work within the limits of our budget. So this actually push an interesting effect is that government is putting more money in project. It was interesting to see that the president of Republic visiting recently Matam on the river, Senegal, and many people there wanted AgriJeune to expand to that area, which is not covered actually. So we hope that government will inject more funds in IFAD projects. Next. So I think these are also two tools I will explain shortly because it's more for the last part of our meeting, but this is a set of studies we did in Senegal, but also in the hub where we work with 7 countries. And it is to plan a bit on the long term because many countries are caught into the short term dealing with crisis after crisis. So we say, okay, now if you think by 2030, by 2050 or 2063, which is African Union agenda, how do you want your agriculture to be? Your population will have doubled. How can you feed them? What do you want to import? What do you want to produce locally? What do you want to export? So in each of these countries, we develop these studies and we hope to present them to you soon or to the Food Summit, because that gives various scenarios according to what the countries want to develop. And it's very interesting to see the impact of climate change, the impact of demography, and the impact of remittances as well on how to deal and improve agriculture. Next slide. This is the last one, just to remind that there are two digital tools we launch and which are working very well. First is the Facebook groups working IFAD Africa, where many people exchange their solution on agriculture. The second one is weconnectfarmers.com, this platform that empowers farmers, as you can read. And this is made very simple to be accessible on phone. You have a training part with online training, and you have application and agri-text softwares which people can download and apply. So the point is not to invent new applications. There are plenty done by the private sector. And I really wish, Pedro, that you and your unit can use this application to add more apps there which relate to remittances, which relate to transfer of funds, because for the time being, they are mostly about agriculture and livestock. And I think it would be good to have also all these new digital products which are linked to remittances. So that's for it for my presentation on Senegal, and over to you.
Thank you so much for this, Benoit. Indeed, this is a perfect example where we can link the reality of many of the stakeholders, remittance families or diaspora investments with other tools that do exist indeed. For them, they don't see a difference in their daily life. I think we can help them make that connection. So thank you so much for this. Now in the agenda, we have an opportunity for an open discussion to continue maybe on the questions before that. But otherwise, fully open. I don't know if there's still reactions.
There's a written question by Anne Turinayo.
Okay. Do you mind reading it?
Yeah, distance to the access point. Okay, no, I think Frederic replied. She was asking on the issue of access, what is the longest distance rural people have to travel to reach a money point? I would like to understand how easy, how fast, and therefore how often rural people in Senegal can access their remittances or other finances. And Frederic provides a reply. Should I read that as well?
Well, maybe Frederic, you can.
Yeah.
You can,
we did a survey in the framework of the Senegal diagnostic, we recently undertaken in the framework of the PRIME project. We did a survey on international remittances access point and the distance, how far were they from the population. And so we have calculated that 3.2 million people are located in a radius that is more than 10 kilometers. So quite far to the access point. And of course, it is in rural areas where people are the less well served. It's not a surprise, but what we now are trying to do is to leverage the mobile money infrastructure, because there are 60,000 mobile money agents in Senegal, while on the other hand, you have only 4,000 access points for international remittances. So we support, let's say, the migration toward sending remittances to mobile wallets so they can be picked up at mobile money agent as well. And second question, frequency. Well, in the report, you can find information about frequency, about the amount of remittances for domestic and international. As I mentioned, domestic remittances, they are below $50. Less frequent than international remittances that are on average $200. So most of people, they receive 2 or 3 times a year. For international remittances, 1/4 is receiving every month. This is not the case for domestic remittances, but the common trait for both is to have a migrant they can count on if they have an issue. So this is what is the common denominator for both recipient households. But you can find information on this in the report. And this is important. These amounts are important because on average, we assess that the typical farmers earn less than $600 a year. So if they receive $50, that means a lot.
Absolutely, Fred. Thank you for that. And if I may add something, is that reality that's maybe the first step, is to take that into consideration. And it's not the aggregated flows. If we take any costs up, for instance, we always talk about the World Bank flows, the aggregated flows, but there's less information about the individual families that receive this, or the migrants actually abroad sending it. That's where I believe we can focus more, and there's more interest right now from governments in knowing that. Actually, no later than yesterday, we were in a meeting with our friends from LAC with the Ministry of Finance for Guatemala, and they would like to address this. They want to integrate this reality now in their cost ups. They're seeing really the opportunity. There's many issues on access, as you mentioned, but I think overall what we need to try to look at is that more information is needed as to how they're used. I think Jonathan asked that question, is now that we know that it's a reality, can we go more in depth and try to match supply and demand, be it for remittance recipients or be it for the diaspora that is investing back home. And maybe if I don't see any raising hand, I just wanted to ask one question. I do see one, so I will keep my point. Nadine, I see you have a question.
Yeah, Pedro, thank you. And thanks for the presentation for the colleagues. Maybe, Pedro, just to understand a little bit from IFAD side, I don't know if we've tried to do some few things, I mean, in terms of bringing together different farmers and who are recipients of these funds. Because, okay, $50, it's okay, it's a good money for a farmer, but it's not enough to invest in something, you know. But have we tried to bring them together and get this remittances and maybe put some money from our side also as IFAD and try to build something around that? Thank you, over.
Sure. I think what is needed to understand is when, if we're talking about the recipients, and if it's a farmer and is recipient for money abroad, the majority of them don't have savings. In the case of the study, we saw that actually they do accumulate savings. Half of it is in kind. We just take it for granted. An anecdote, discussing with Antonio Rota, he discovered after many, many years that a lot of the livestock that we're promoting basically was financed by remittances, but that was basically under the radar. There was no understanding on how this was obtained until the question was asked, and many raised their hands and say, how many of you get livestock with remittances every cent? And more than half of the room raising their hands. So Antonio was very surprised. So he needed to include this in this equation. Examples like this have many. I think I would give $100 to any of you that are working in the field that have never seen a money transfer sign somewhere because it's there. So it's hidden in plain sight. Now, it cannot do everything, but that $50 might be the difference between them having a good harvest or not, because it can be invested. Even 25% of that can help. So we need to look at the possibility at the right level, I think. If it is to create savings, or actually to have access to credit, we have many at IFAD, at the FFR, we finance over 60 projects in 50 countries of these models to try to see what works. Working with microfinance institutions or agri-cooperatives, we realized that if they integrate the remittances mechanism, they can create credit history. And therefore, that can leverage them access to credit, insurance, and again, diminish the importance that remittances will have in the long term, and addressing basically migration that becomes more a choice rather than a necessity, which is the reality. It's the reality in Senegal. I mean, we're discussing with Thierry mentioned it. Right now, the option for a young Senegalese is, should I migrate or not? Before thinking is, should I invest in agriculture? That's a pull effect in a digital world. You get it to social media and you see your friends having what they promote, of course, of a great life elsewhere, be it in the city or bypassing the city and going abroad. That's the reality that we're facing. So we need is to bring, even if these small options, but these small options in the medium to long term can have a really transformative change. But for that, I agree that more data is needed, specific products. As you say, a group, the collective remittances or the collective investment from diaspora is a solution. There are products out there. We've done it in the Philippines, where we got the diaspora investing as a group with a cooperative. It was a 50-50. And they invested in Mabibe Batangas, in agriculture, in an egg layer farm. They started receiving revenue, basically, income back on their investment. It created jobs. Mabibe Batangas started exporting eggs rather than importing. This is just a small example of the phenomenon that basically works, but it needs to be planned. There's no quick solution. It's, as I often say, it's a golden opportunity, but there's no silver bullet that just will deal with all our problems. But we need to put that in the equation. That would be my take. I don't know if there's other. Jonathan.
Thank you, Pedro. There's a statement you just made that excited me a lot. That statement of using remittances or part of remittances as savings to kind of use that in the medium term, based on credit history, savings history, to mobilize loans. On the ground, we are realizing that this particular approach is it's being counterproductive. Many savers look at that as a way that is unethical. They save their money, whether it is from remittances or from any source. The financial institutions that receive the savings do not pay them interest on the savings, but they in turn use their savings as cash collateral to give them loans, whether the savings has been in the bank or the financial institution for long. They give them loans based on the cash collateral that is derived from the savings, or very high interest rates. So as you are promoting, remittances for savings, which will be used as cash collateral for loans, we need to look carefully at what is it that is discouraging these remittance receivers from saving. You will realize that there is an ethical issue in it, because the savings does not receive a good enough interest compared to the interest that will be charged on loans that they take from the same savings that constitute the loans for them. I want to push this out and make sure that we start looking at what is probably discouraging, receivers putting some of their, remittances received into savings. Just a comment.
I definitely would like to answer to that, because I don't think it's a full. But let me take the questions from Jean-Claude as well. I see a hand raised, and then I think Frederick and I would answer.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pedro. I have just a question on the broadband penetration rates and the internet penetration rate is still very low in many developing countries where the rural people are, allocate, while those can be, great catalyzer for remittances to get to the, to the receivers. And in many countries, the mobile providers are the main also provider of taxis, so they are reluctant to invest in rural places in those technology, broadband technologies. So the study has considered, for example, to carry out some simulation on a cost and benefits in case a specific company is going to invest, how much it can be cost and how much it can gain. So also for the side of the government. So for the figure that we saw, the remittances count for 10% of GDP, which is quite a lot. So the study have considered, for example, to run some simulation in case the government levy some taxes to the company, how much the company can can then invest in the rural allocation over. Thank you.
Yeah, there was a lot of questions on that. Frédéric, do you wanna start? I have some points to make, but I would prefer to give you the floor.
So I start
I
with.
want to monopolize.
So Kylian wanted to answer the second question. I start with Jonathan's question, which was a comment. Well, this is the issue of microfinance. So I think we will organize another brown bag when we discuss this issue of high interest on loans, charge on loan. But regarding remittances, the point that I wanted to make is that in this study, at least, what was observed is that the savings were not coming from remittances, but from other activities, especially the harvest, the seasonal harvest. But as I said, remittances helps not to tap into that saving. So and encouraging people to save is a good is good in any case. Of course, using savings as a deposit as a collateral to get a loan, I agree that it increases the cost of the loan without generating any interest, but this is the only way to get a loan. On the other hand, what we would like to investigate a little bit more is how to reduce the cost of the loan by reducing the risk, the credit risk, and some possibilities are to foster agricultural insurance, but it has a cost. Of course, it reduces the risk, but it has a cost. Who bears the cost? The producer, the microfinance institution, or a third party. So this opens a new question. With remittances, the migrants, they can pay the premium on behalf of their relative. This is something that has been explored. And that's it regarding Jonathan's question. For the digital divide, the question raised by Jean-Claude, I will let Kylian respond, but the point I wanted to make is that there are some means where internet is not available through, let's say, the mobile network. There are a lot of means to reach out to populations through SMS or USSD channels. And in the case of Senegal, at least, the country is well covered, and there are some clear strategies and plans from the government to cover the entire country. But this is something that is important to consider.
Thank you, Fred. I will then give the floor for the digital one to Kylian, FFR digital and mobile remittance expert.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, good afternoon as it is in Europe, and good morning as it is still here in the UK. Just on that issue of connectivity, yes, connectivity certainly in rural areas, is exclusively driven in developing countries really by the existence of mobile networks or not. And the decision whether by a telecoms company to put connectivity, a tower in a certain location, it's business driven. It's nothing else. Either there's a business case to do that or there isn't. And that includes not just 3G, which you kind of need for basic internet access, but also includes 2G, so even SMS and voice. So there really does have to be a business case there. Now, whether taxation is a disincentive for investment, I mean, that's a good question. That's a question you kind of put to experts at the IMF or something like that. But, obviously taxes will impact on the business case to a certain degree. So whether you could ask the reverse question, whether governments could use tax incentives to encourage investment in rural areas, yes, they could for sure. And there's one area that I've often thought about I've not seen necessarily looked at, is whether de-risking or development finance could be used also to de-risk some of the risk involved in setting up the infrastructure for connectivity in rural areas. And that's something that could be discussed more, I think. So that's just my input I wanted to give on that one.
Thank you. Before taking the question on Nadine, I just want to complement what was said. Absolutely, as you know, out of this crisis, there's a big phenomenon that has been happening with, particularly with the G20 on the enabling environment. There's a big push for digitalization that has grown exponentially. But the message from IFAD has been received loud and clear, is we need to be careful in just promoting the whole digital, because again, our stakeholders in rural areas are facing from infrastructure issues. So if all the benefits just go to digital without addressing the source issues or infrastructure issues, then we're running into another problem. So this is to say that with the new opportunities, new challenges come on board. I think, Jonathan, that's what I take also from your main question. Saving is all good, but be careful, because with some savings come bad practices. The same thing as we saw 20 years ago with microfinance. The idea is fantastic, but then we saw issues coming in, the new issues that need to be addressed. So I fully agree with you. There is good practices, however, in institutions that look at it, that look at savings. They have a different approach. I can actually refer to many countries in Europe that were able to grow their economy on their migrants, particularly the southern ones. We're sitting in one in Italy right now who bet on their migrants to increase their increase their client base with this, and did not play on the savings collateral the way you mentioned, but indeed it exists. So this is why IFAD needs to be involved in that, as delivering and creating these products to make sure that this type of practices is not the let's say the business solution to go. So I fully agree with you on that. I see, Nadine, you had another question.
Yes, thanks, Pedro. Maybe two small questions. The first one is about the legal aspect. In terms
I'm sorry,
of,
could you?
Yeah, about the legal aspect, the legal one.
Sorry.
So, I mean, we all know the issues with terrorism, with money laundering, etc. And what happened with Somalia, for instance, a few years ago.
Yes.
And all. So I don't know, what is this? What are you doing around this? I mean, with the government, and is it really a barrier now to transfer money, and especially for our program FFR? And the second one is now, I mean, what Jonathan said is correct. And then also now talking about these money providers, or let's say these mobile companies who can accept, I mean, digitalizing money, the exchange rate also, sometimes it's really very, very low or high, let's say. I mean, people lose a lot of money in this exchange rate, especially when in many countries you receive it in your current currency and not in the exporting one. So what are your thoughts about that, Pedro and the team? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. This is some of the hidden work that we do in the background that is so important to deliver the results. I mentioned in my slide before access, making remittances safer and cheaper. And this is where all the enabling environment work that we do. I just mentioned before the GPFI of the G20 and a lot of other activities that we do is to bring this KYC, it's know your customer issues of AML, CFT, anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing issues that are really affecting the remittances sector. Many of the banks or the corresponding banks are the banks that hold the account of the MTOs decide to de-risk, meaning not assess the risk, but says this MTO is where it's funny. There might be some dirty money in there. Let's just shut down. What does it mean for IFAD? That many of our stakeholders suddenly from one day to another, as it's been the case in Somalia, stop receiving money. And then we have a problem on our shoulders that we don't know how to deal with. And governments were not aware of that. So since this has been our work with the G20s for the last 5 years, is to really bring beyond that cost issue, because that's the only thing that they could talk about. We say there's a receiving end. Half of the flows go to rural areas. If you're addressing poverty, you need to look into that. So now, I'm glad to say that during this, the benefits of this crisis has been to really raise the dialogue, and we are contributing right now as we speak with in the change of policies on the sending side, particularly with the G20 countries on their national remittance plans. So they bring this dimension of the rural areas, of the benefit side. And I think this is greatly going to help the sector and therefore IFAD by not having this de-risking phenomenon. I mean, banks can decide to shut the accounts if they want, but we need to shame them into not doing it. And that's basically what we're doing. And the International Day of Family Remittances goes into the direction. So this is all happening sort of in the background. We might wonder sometimes, why are we doing this? But I'm so glad you asked that question, because without an account, without this, it doesn't work. There's a few alternatives like cryptocurrencies that are popping up. We're going to address this next month at the Global Forum. That is going to be part of an alternative solution, but we're not there yet. So thank you very much for your questions, because it is the KYC where we're working. We're having the regional project right now in Africa, including Senegal, with guidelines that were produced by AFI, the Alliance for Financial Inclusion, on applying KYC and CDD, which are customer due diligence, on how you use legally all the legal means right now in the regulatory framework for compliance. So there's no shutting down of accounts, right? And this is to incentivize, if they can do that, they can extend further to rural areas and address many of the issues that we just talked about, access to remittance in rural areas, which is an opportunity cost. Leaving your kids or your activity to go and receive your remittances, it's 10 kilometers away, might be a half-day job. That's what we can facilitate and can stop, right? So I hope it addressed. I would love to tell you more. I just don't want to extend, but I hope that it addressed some of that. We're 1 minute past. I just want to basically say this exercise with PARM is to validate something we already knew in a way. We already knew that remittances are indeed for millions of families an insurance. It is used like that. It can be misused, it's true. But I think this is what we validated, and through the work with PARM, with the government of Senegal, I think there's an opportunity right now to link this remittances and agriculture risk insurance from a strategic point of view, and we look forward to be able to engage to the next level on that. I don't know, Massimo, if you would like to add on that on the few minutes left that we have.
No, just to highlight again, thank you, Pedro, most of the next steps, because as I said before, this was actually a preliminary studies which goal was to, I say again, respond to some questions from an agricultural management point of view. Now we will probably respond to your very interesting question from Nadim, Jonathan, and so on during the design process, because this is the goal. Because now the question will be how now remittances with a package of other tools can, let's say, be fit into the context, because now the study will be very challenging, because, the question is, how can remittance be used for agricultural risk management? How can remittance be used as a financial to access to finance, and so on? This will be made by experts in the area. And for sure, since we are in PMI, we want to better link our work to the IFAD country office and the network in place. For sure will be involved, informed, and for sure we'll expect some input from your side, because this is exactly what you expected in the process. Try to make our expertise in remittances risk management available for country office, and involved in converging PMI, and not only expertise in the area of finance, which is what we need. Of course, keep in mind that our final client will be the government, and the ultimate beneficiaries farmers, with all the constraints we know, because we want to design this project in rural areas where we know the limitations in this specific context. But that's why we hire expert on that. So, and I guess this is very exciting for me, from my side. It's very exciting exercise because the topic is very sensitive. There is an amazing potential in a country like Senegal. And I think we laid the foundation, for a unique, let's say, experience putting together FFR and PARM team with the IFAD country offices and the regions. So let's see how we will do something concrete together. Over to you, Pedro, and thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Just to reiterate, we're here. I think it's a mutual need. We can support in digging. I think everybody understands the potential, the possibilities that exist, but we need to fine tune more on concrete examples to address that. Otherwise, it becomes just a missed opportunity. So I think the help is mutual. We're here to support that from the FFR. Any questions that you might have, please do not hesitate. If there's other areas that you would like us to try to investigate, we'll be delighted to do that. And of course, at design level, at the planning level, I think that's the best way to start, rather than just an ad hoc at the end, because that makes it very difficult for either side. So it is, I think, our objectives. With 4 minutes past, I don't know if Benoit would like to give you the last words, Benoit, for this, to send us home thinking with some thoughts for the next ones and wishes.
Thank you, Pedro. And all I would say 2 points to conclude: one on Senegal and one on next steps and other countries. On Senegal, let me insist, please, if you could have a list of all these digital applications linked to remittances, etc. We are ready to create a space in We Connect Farmers just as a repository so people can use them. Then at project level, we already do some work on insurances, so that would be good to see it with PADAER. That's on crop insurance. But I think AgriJeune for you would be very interesting. With many young agripreneurs, they use that remittances money, and it would be good to develop some tools at field level with them. Then I would say that for Senegal and the next countries you're going to study, the point is that now migration is both, I would say, workers going to Europe or elsewhere, but also a high-level migration of people who have level of studies, who are in finance sector, who are engineers. And we see more and more these people want to invest in their country. And that's a completely different remittance. It's much less people, but it's much more money. And I see also them investing in agriculture, actually. It's interesting to see that in Senegal, and I'm sure you can see it in Ghana or elsewhere, people coming back from New York, coming back from Europe, and created companies. And I wonder sometimes if IFAD should not go also and see what can be done with them. So I hope that your studies in the next countries will be as successful as this one. And please extend also your forecast for the next 20 years, because this is the key thing in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Benoit. Massimo and I would like, I think, to thank all of you for this opportunity. I hope it's just the first of several to come. So again, thank you so much for your participation. Do not hesitate to send any questions, any thoughts, any particularly the tricky ones. All the doubts that you might have, that would be fantastic for us to be able to address those challenges. But IFAD has a key role to play. We often say it's the elephant in the room. This migrant contribution, they should be partners in our daily operations, and we think it can be so. So, Massimo, I'll give you the last word.
No, I can just reiterate the thanks for the organization, Benoit, and the colleagues and the FFR team, of course. And now after this meeting, we will, of course, revert to you with some operational and practical actions, because now it's time to enter into the operation of our technical work. So thank you very much, especially the FFR team, for organizing this event. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good lunch.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.